Oh, no, oh, no. No, I don't think so. Or the year before, or the year before that. I haven't gotten the least bit bored.
Elizabeth Montgomery, the witch Samantha of Bewitched, once captivated the world with her golden hair, gentle smile, and expressive eyes. But few people know that behind that perfect appearance is a life filled with deep trauma, where dreams are crushed by power, sex, and betrayal. At the age of 19, Elizabeth became a victim of a treacherous industry. Her father, a cold and calculating man, did not see his daughter as a child in need of protection, but as a chess piece in a game of fame. He pushed her into the spotlight, not with love, but with calculation. Worse, the man she once loved was the traitor. He secretly sold her sexy and private photos to a film company, turning Elizabeth's image into a public commodity in the dark entertainment market. And that was not the end of the pain.
Thing that really, you think of a certain type of actress for a certain type.
Backstage, when the lights went out, Elizabeth was raped by an unseen assailant. No one came to her defense. No one spoke. Only the chilling reply she had once uttered unconsciously, "Oh, yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you." Cold. Empty. Like her soul at that moment. Born on April 15, 1933, in Los Angeles, Elizabeth Montgomery was more than an actress. She was an indelible television icon, but also a woman with deep, incurable wounds. Behind Samantha's magical wink was a hell she had to live through, silently and alone. Behind Samantha's brilliant career and sweet smile is a past full of blood, tears, and darkness that Elizabeth Montgomery always had to hide. Born into a prestigious family, the daughter of actor Robert Montgomery, she did not have a childhood like other children. From the age of 7, Elizabeth was forced to learn lines, please the camera, and suppress all true emotions to play the role that her parents and Hollywood had arranged. Robert Montgomery was not a gentle father. He was a cold director even in his own home, where his daughter was just a character in the script he wrote. There was no way out. No choice. Only discipline, lights, and sacrifice. 3 marriages, 3 heartbreaks. Not just breakups. Elizabeth was betrayed, controlled, and suffocated by the men she once loved. They made me love them, then trampled me like a prop, she once said. In Hollywood, love is just a commodity. The endless sleepless nights because of drugs. The time she had to use her body to keep her role. She became dependent on sleeping pills and eventually went silent. All to maintain Samantha's angelic face, a role that brought her fame, but also covered up all the dark corners of her soul. The most painful thing was when she was raped on the set by an Emmy-winning director who once called her the muse of American television. Elizabeth wanted to speak up, but Hollywood was silent. The press was silent, the contracts were torn up. And she, that strong woman, chose to survive in silence for nearly 40 years. It was only when she turned 57, when she felt that her time was running out, that Elizabeth decided to break all limits. In a secret interview that was leaked later and quickly buried by Hollywood, she named the 5 men she hated the most. The people who drove her to near suicide, and to the point where she lost faith in what she once considered her entire world. Shockingly, one of those names is the greatest icon in Hollywood history. There was a man who was once called the gentleman of the silver screen. But to Elizabeth Montgomery, he was a predator with a devilish smile. Don't take your eyes off the screen. This story will make you shiver. The first person on the list of people Elizabeth cursed for life was a movie legend that the whole world once admired. That was Gig Young, the domineering lover. He didn't love me. He just loved the feeling of power I brought. Elizabeth once said so. In Hollywood in the 1950s and 1960s, the name Gig Young was associated with romance and elegance. He was the masculine symbol of the era, an Oscar-winning actor. But behind the halo was a man who was unstable, an alcoholic, and obsessed with power. Elizabeth was only 20 years old at the time, just entering the world of fame. She was naive, dreamy, and full of confidence. Gig was 40, experienced and dangerous. They met on the set of Johnny Cool, and their relationship quickly turned into a storm with no way out. At first, it was candlelit dinners and sweet whispers. But Gig gradually took away her freedom, strangling her relationships and dreams. He didn't love me. He wanted to own me. Gig controlled every minute of Elizabeth's schedule. Once he threatened to beat a co-star to death just because he smiled at her. Another time, he stormed onto the set in the middle of filming and screamed, "You're mine. No one touches you." When he wasn't in front of the camera, Gig was a broken soul. He drank every day, screaming into the night, dragging Elizabeth down with him. Every night was hell. The alcohol, the screaming, the whispering as he held her, shaking and telling her that if she left him, he would kill himself. One night in 1964, after a heated argument, Gig smashed the bathroom mirror and threatened to kill himself in front of her. Elizabeth fled the apartment and never returned. Years later, Gig married a woman nearly 30 years younger. Just 3 weeks after the wedding, he shot his wife to death and then committed suicide. In his Manhattan apartment, he left a note that read, "No one belongs to me." When Elizabeth heard the news, she did not respond to any reporters for 6 months. In a rare letter to a close friend, she wrote, "I loved a monster and almost died for him." To her, Gig Young was not a lover, not a life partner, but a stab in the heart of youth. A ghost that kept her awake for more than 10 years. And the next name was even more cruel. The man Elizabeth once called her husband, William Asher. Her ex-husband, longtime collaborator and director behind the success of Bewitched. But few people know that, behind the camera, he is a nightmare in a suit. He is the one who stifles Elizabeth's youth and artistic voice. I once believed that I was in love with a talented person. But it turns out, I was just a living doll in the script he created. Elizabeth once confessed. When they first fell in love, everything was like a dream. She was his muse. And he held the fate of American television in his hands. But behind the scenes, Elizabeth lived in loneliness, jealousy, and betrayal. William Asher was not only an ambitious director, he was also an emotional dictator. During their 10 years of marriage, he controlled everything. From the script, the costumes, to Elizabeth's expressions on set. Worse, William Asher, Elizabeth Montgomery's once trusted husband, had many affairs with young actresses, even when Elizabeth was pregnant. Rumor has it that she once caught him having sex with a production assistant in her own camper van on set. That night, Elizabeth collapsed and almost took her own life in a hotel bathroom with strong alcohol and sedatives. The divorce in 1973 not only ended a broken marriage, but also buried Elizabeth's last faith in love. After that shock, she rushed into many other relationships, but no one could make her open up again. From that moment on, Elizabeth Montgomery vowed never to forgive William Asher. In a private interview when she was 57 years old, she once said something that shocked Hollywood. "He was the first person I wanted to erase from my memory. If I really had magic, I would make him disappear forever." But that was just the beginning. Behind that glamorous exterior, there were 3 other names that haunted her for the rest of her life. Among them was a faceless force, a powerful man behind the scenes of television. He was neither a lover nor a husband. But he almost took away everything Elizabeth Montgomery had built. That was Fred Silverman, the powerful man behind the American television network in the 1970s. At the time, he was the programming director of ABC, later running CBS and NBC. He was known as the hidden architect, who secretly controlled the scripts, castings, and even the private lives of actresses. For Elizabeth Montgomery, Fred was a dark storm that came at the height of her fame. At an internal ABC party, he invited Elizabeth into a private room to discuss a new script. A familiar invitation, but one that hid a system of power based on sexual advances and bribes. Elizabeth refused. And so the nightmare began. Just a week later, the movie she had signed on for was abruptly canceled for unknown reasons. 2 weeks later, a popular talk show she was about to appear on was pulled from the air at the last minute. A month later, Variety reported that she was showing signs of mental illness and behaving erratically. No one said anything, but everyone knew it was Fred's punishment. Fred didn't scream. He didn't threaten. He didn't leave a trace. Just one call in the dark was enough to ruin a career. A former assistant shuddered after leaving NBC, saying that Elizabeth wasn't the only victim, but she was the only one who dared to refuse and paid the price. Fred Silverman broke her wings without touching her. A kind of invisible power that kills without leaving a trace. The fourth person, Aaron Spelling, was the manipulator behind the scenes. He didn't kill Elizabeth with a knife, but with silence, control, and contracts she never signed. During the 1970s, Aaron was an absolute force in American television. He was the producer behind blockbusters like Dynasty, Charlie's Angels, Beverly Hills 90210, and served as an unofficial creative consultant on several seasons of Bewitched. Elizabeth thought she had found a creative ally. But in reality, Aaron Spelling didn't need an independent Elizabeth. He just needed a puppet who could laugh at the right times. When Elizabeth suggested changing her character, getting out of the witch image to try her hand at deeper psychological roles, Spelling flatly refused. He even tried to block other film projects she wanted to participate in. A director once revealed that Aaron had his own blacklist, and Elizabeth was at the top of that list simply because she dared to say no. Once, she was nominated for the lead role in a film adaptation of a Joan Didion novel. But just before the contract was signed, the investor received a call advising her to stay away from Elizabeth because she was too unpredictable and lacked long-term commitment. The caller was none other than Aaron Spelling. Unlike Gig Young or other men who had hurt her, Spelling didn't need to make a fuss. He controlled by contracts, by connections, and by making people hate you by accident. When Elizabeth asked to be a producer on a special episode of Bewitched, Spelling lobbied to have her emotionally abusive ex-husband direct. That was the last straw. Elizabeth collapsed backstage in a panic attack and was off set for a month with acute anxiety. For her, Aaron Spelling didn't need to hit her or scold her, but he robbed her of a decade of creativity. He made her realize that the cruelest thing in Hollywood isn't being hated, it's being controlled to the point of forgetting who you are. And then there was the final man. The man who had always been in the shadows. The man who had held Elizabeth's hand at the Emmys, but who had also started the scandal that had plagued her for a year. It was Henry Hurlbut, the shadowy traitor. For legal reasons, his real name has been changed, according to Elizabeth's personal diary. Not the paparazzi, not strangers. The people she once considered family who had made her a laughingstock in the press. Henry was a publicist, an image manager, who had worked closely with Elizabeth during her heyday. They had dinner together every week, wrote speeches together, and shared behind-the-scenes Hollywood secrets. Elizabeth had called him the only person who could keep the truth about her. But she had trusted the wrong person. In 1977, just months after Elizabeth announced her first television project, which she had written herself, an anonymous article appeared, accusing her of having a lesbian relationship with a young actress. The article, accompanied by fake behind-the-scenes photos, sparked a wave of public criticism. Contracts were canceled. Investors backed out. The project almost collapsed altogether. After months of investigation, her personal lawyer discovered that the source of the leak was within her own public relations team. And the name behind it all was Henry. He had secretly negotiated with a major studio to turn Elizabeth's idea into another project, produced by someone else. When she refused to cooperate, he chose revenge by destroying her reputation. Elizabeth collapsed completely. She locked herself in her house for 2 months, refused to give interviews, and canceled all public events in 1978. I can forgive the man who left me, but I cannot forgive the man who turned my smile into a weapon against me. From a diary entry published after her death. Those are 5 names, 5 men, 5 wounds that Elizabeth Montgomery will never forget. Who do you think Elizabeth hated the most?